Our journey of self-discovery has led us to the fascinating and often perplexing terrain of morality and ethics. Having explored the internal landscape of the self, we now turn our attention outward, examining the frameworks we use to navigate the moral landscape. Understanding these frameworks is not simply an academic exercise. It is crucial for making ethical choices in our personal lives, our relationships, and our broader social interactions. This section will explore several dominant ethical systems, illuminating their strengths, weaknesses, and practical implications. One of the most influential ethical frameworks is utilitarianism. At its core, utilitarianism posits that the morally right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or well-being. This consequentialist approach focuses on the outcomes of actions, judging their morality based on their consequences rather than on inherent rightness or wrongness. Jeremy Bentham, a pivotal figure in utilitarianism, championed a quantitative approach, suggesting we should strive to calculate the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. This involved weighing the pleasure and pain resulting from an action, aiming for a net positive outcome. John Stuart Mill, a later influential utilitarian, refined this approach, distinguishing between higher and lower pleasures, arguing that intellectual and moral pleasures are superior to mere sensual gratification. While seemingly straightforward, applying utilitarianism in real-world scenarios can prove incredibly complex. How do we accurately measure happiness and suffering? How do we weigh the interests of individuals against the collective good? Consider the classic trolley problem. A runaway trolley is about to kill 5 people, but you can divert it onto a sidetrack, killing 1 person instead. A utilitarian perspective would likely advocate for diverting the trolley, sacrificing 1 life to save 5, maximizing overall happiness. However, this approach may clash with deeply held intuitions about the inherent wrongness of intentionally causing harm. Deontology, in stark contrast to utilitarianism, emphasizes duty and moral rules. Immanuel Kant, the preeminent deontological philosopher, argued that the morality of an action lies not in its consequences, but in its adherence to universal moral principles derived from reason. Kant's categorical imperative, a central tenet of his ethical system, dictates that we should only act according to principles we could rationally will to become universal laws. This emphasizes the importance of consistency and impartiality in our moral decision-making. For example, lying is always wrong, according to Kantian ethics, regardless of the potential benefits. Even if lying could save someone's life, the act itself violates the principle of truth-telling, which Kant argues should be universalized. The strength of deontology lies in its emphasis on universal moral principles, providing a stable and consistent ethical framework. However, its rigidity can be problematic. Conflicting duties may arise, leaving us in moral dilemmas with no clear solution. Furthermore, deontology's disregard for consequences can lead to outcomes that appear morally unacceptable. Imagine a situation where telling the truth would lead to significant harm. A strict deontological approach might compel one to act in a way that causes greater suffering than lying would. Virtue ethics, another significant ethical framework, shifts the focus from actions and rules to character. Instead of asking what action is right, virtue ethics asks what kind of person we should be. This approach, rooted in the works of ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, emphasizes cultivating virtues such as honesty, compassion, courage, and justice. These virtues, understood as character traits that enable us to flourish, guide our actions and shape our moral character. According to Aristotle, virtue lies in the mean between 2 extremes. For example, courage is the mean between recklessness and cowardice. The emphasis on character development distinguishes virtue ethics from consequentialist and deontological approaches. It's not simply about following rules or calculating consequences. It's about becoming a virtuous person, capable of making ethically sound judgments and acting accordingly. The strength of virtue ethics lies in its emphasis on personal growth and the holistic development of character. However, its lack of specific guidelines for resolving moral dilemmas can be seen as a weakness. Different virtues might conflict in certain situations, requiring nuanced judgment and prioritization. Moreover, the definition and application of virtues can vary across cultures and contexts, leading to potential disagreements about what constitutes a virtuous life. Care ethics, a more recent development in ethical theory, centers on the importance of relationships and empathy. Developed primarily by feminist philosophers, this perspective challenges the traditional focus on abstract principles and impartial judgments, highlighting instead the crucial role of caring, responsiveness, and emotional engagement in moral decision-making. Care ethics emphasizes our interconnectedness and the moral responsibilities we have towards those with whom we have close relationships. It values empathy, compassion, and the ability to understand and respond to the needs of others. A care ethicist would likely emphasize the importance of context-specific considerations, recognizing that moral judgments cannot be divorced from the particular circumstances and relationships involved. This approach is particularly relevant in contexts such as healthcare, family relationships, and social justice issues, where empathy and responsiveness are crucial. While care ethics emphasizes valuable aspects of human interaction, it can be criticized for potential partiality. Focusing primarily on close relationships might lead to neglecting the needs of those outside one's immediate circle, potentially leading to ethical inconsistencies. Ethical frameworks are not mutually exclusive. They often complement and inform one another. Drawing upon different ethical perspectives can provide a richer and more nuanced understanding of moral dilemmas. Consider, for instance, the issue of environmental sustainability. A utilitarian approach might focus on maximizing the well-being of future generations, considering the long-term consequences of environmental degradation. A deontological perspective might emphasize our duties to protect the environment based on universal moral principles of responsibility and stewardship. A virtue ethics approach might focus on cultivating virtues, such as environmental responsibility and respect for nature. By integrating these various perspectives, we can develop a more comprehensive and robust approach to addressing complex ethical challenges. In the end, navigating the moral landscape requires both intellectual rigor and empathetic understanding. The frameworks discussed above provide essential tools for thoughtful moral reasoning, but the ultimate responsibility for ethical decision-making rests with each individual. The exploration of these systems should not lead to a sense of moral relativism, an idea that suggests there are no universally valid moral principles, but rather to a deeper understanding of the complex factors shaping our moral choices and the importance of continuous reflection and critical analysis in navigating the ethical dimensions of human existence. The pursuit of ethical understanding is a lifelong journey, requiring continuous self-reflection and a willingness to engage with diverse perspectives and challenging situations. Ultimately, the goal is not merely to adhere to a specific framework, but to cultivate moral wisdom, guided by both reason and empathy, allowing us to make informed and responsible choices that contribute to a more just and compassionate world. The frameworks discussed utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, and care ethics provide valuable tools for ethical reasoning, yet they often fall short when confronted with the messy realities of real-world moral dilemmas. These dilemmas frequently involve conflicting values, ambiguous situations, and the agonizing necessity to choose between competing goods or evils. Understanding these complexities is vital not only for academic exploration, but also for navigating the ethical challenges we face daily. One prominent example is the conflict between individual rights and the collective good. Consider the ongoing debates surrounding public health measures during a pandemic. Mandates requiring vaccination or mask wearing, while potentially beneficial for public health by reducing transmission and protecting vulnerable populations, can infringe upon individual autonomy and freedom of choice. A utilitarian approach might justify such mandates based on maximizing overall well-being, arguing that the benefits to the population outweigh the individual limitations. However, a deontological perspective might raise concerns about the violation of individual rights, emphasizing the inherent value and dignity of each person, regardless of the collective benefits. This highlights the inherent tension between these ethical systems. The utilitarian pursuit of the greatest good for the greatest number potentially clashes with the deontological emphasis on individual rights and duties. The resolution of such dilemmas rarely involves a simple, universally accepted answer, often demanding a careful balancing act and a nuanced understanding of the context. Furthermore, the application of ethical frameworks is often complicated by the presence of uncertainty and incomplete information. Consider the challenges faced by medical professionals in end-of-life care. Determining the most ethically appropriate course of action when dealing with a terminally ill patient requires a careful consideration of numerous factors, including the patient's wishes, their quality of life, the potential benefits and risks of different treatment options, and the patient's family dynamics. Applying utilitarian principles might lead to a focus on pain management and palliative care to maximize comfort in the remaining time, while deontological principles might emphasize the importance of respecting the patient's autonomy and right to self-determination. The ethical complexity is further magnified when the patient lacks the capacity to express their wishes, forcing a difficult decision based on uncertain interpretations of their past statements or the best interests of the individual as determined by others. Virtue ethics adds another layer, encouraging the cultivation of virtues such as compassion, empathy, and wisdom in navigating these emotionally challenging situations. The inherent ambiguity of certain situations further complicates ethical decision-making. Consider the ethical dilemmas faced by whistleblowers, individuals who expose wrongdoing within organizations. While exposing corruption or illegal activities is often viewed as a morally commendable act, it can also lead to significant personal risks, including job loss, social ostracization, and even legal repercussions. From a deontological perspective, a whistleblower might be seen as fulfilling a moral duty to uphold truth and justice, regardless of personal consequences. However, a utilitarian analysis might weigh the potential benefits of exposing the wrongdoing against the potential harms to the whistleblower and their family. The decision to act as a whistleblower requires a careful consideration of these competing values and a nuanced understanding of the potential outcomes, further highlighting the complexities of ethical reasoning in the Moreover, the cultural and societal contexts significantly impact the interpretation and application of ethical principles. What is considered morally acceptable in one culture may be viewed as unacceptable in another. The issue of abortion provides a stark example. Ethical perspectives on abortion often clash, with some emphasizing the sanctity of life and the right of the fetus to exist, while others emphasize a woman's bodily autonomy and right to reproductive choice. These differing views often reflect deep-seated cultural and religious beliefs, leading to passionate and often irreconcilable disagreements. Attempts to resolve such conflicts through purely rational ethical frameworks frequently prove insufficient, highlighting the crucial role that cultural and societal values play in shaping moral perceptions and ethical judgments. Furthermore, technological advancements introduce new ethical dilemmas that existing frameworks may struggle to address. The development of artificial intelligence and its potential applications raise profound ethical questions concerning accountability, bias, and the potential impact on human employment and social structures. Autonomous weapon systems, for instance, raise challenging questions about responsibility and the potential for unintended harm. Who is accountable if a self-driving car causes an accident? How do we ensure that AI systems are free from bias and do not perpetuate existing societal inequalities? These questions necessitate the development of novel ethical frameworks and the adaptation of existing ones to address the unique challenges posed by emerging technologies. The rapid pace of technological change continually forces us to reevaluate our ethical principles and adapt our approaches to navigate the evolving moral landscape. The issue of environmental ethics also presents complex and multifaceted dilemmas. Balancing economic growth with environmental protection requires a careful consideration of competing interests and the long-term consequences of human actions. Should we prioritize economic development even if it leads to environmental degradation? Or should we prioritize environmental sustainability even if it limits economic growth? A utilitarian approach might call for a careful cost-benefit analysis, weighing the economic benefits of industrial development against the potential environmental harms. A deontological perspective might emphasize our moral obligations to protect the environment and preserve resources for future generations. Virtue ethics would encourage the development of virtues such as environmental stewardship and responsibility. The resolution of such dilemmas requires a deep understanding of ecological systems and the long-term consequences of human actions, as well as a willingness to consider diverse perspectives and integrate different ethical frameworks. In conclusion, the navigation of ethical dilemmas and moral conflicts is rarely straightforward. The real world rarely presents neat, easily categorized situations where a single ethical framework provides a clear answer. Instead, we are often faced with complex and ambiguous situations requiring a nuanced understanding of competing values and the ability to integrate diverse ethical perspectives. The development of moral wisdom requires more than simply applying theoretical frameworks. It requires empathy, critical thinking, and a willingness to grapple with the uncertainties and ambiguities inherent in ethical decision-making. The ongoing exploration of ethical dilemmas through case studies and critical reflection is vital in cultivating ethical judgment and responsibility, allowing us to navigate the complexities of the moral landscape with greater wisdom and compassion. The journey of ethical understanding is a continuous process of learning, self-reflection, and engagement with the ever-evolving challenges of human existence. The preceding discussion highlighted the inherent complexities of applying established ethical frameworks to real-world dilemmas. We saw how seemingly straightforward principles like utilitarianism and deontology often clash, leaving us grappling with difficult choices in the face of uncertainty and incomplete information. Now, let's delve deeper into a crucial layer of this complexity: the profound influence of culture and society on our moral landscape. Our moral values are not formed in a vacuum. They are deeply intertwined with the social and cultural context in which we live. Understanding this intricate relationship is critical to comprehending the diversity of moral codes across the globe and throughout history, and to fostering empathy and understanding in an increasingly interconnected world. The concept of moral relativism argues that moral judgments are true or false only relative to some particular standpoint, for instance, a particular culture or a historical period, and that no standpoint is uniquely privileged over all others. While this perspective acknowledges the significant variations in moral beliefs across different societies, it doesn't necessarily imply that all moral systems are equally valid, or that there are no universal moral principles. Indeed, many argue for the existence of some shared, fundamental ethical values, even while acknowledging significant cultural variations in their expression and application. For instance, the value placed on human life, while manifest differently across cultures, is arguably a near universal ethical precept. However, the definition of human life and the acceptable circumstances under which it might be compromised vary widely, depending on factors such as religious beliefs, legal frameworks, and societal norms. Consider the issue of euthanasia, or physician-assisted suicide. In some cultures and countries, this practice is strictly prohibited, often viewed as a violation of religious or ethical precepts against taking a human life. In other contexts, where suffering is deemed unbearable and dignity is prioritized, assisted dying may be viewed as a compassionate and morally acceptable option, even regulated through legal frameworks. This divergence illustrates how cultural and societal norms profoundly shape our moral perceptions and judgments surrounding life and death. The debate isn't simply about the act itself, but about the weighing of competing values: preserving life versus alleviating suffering, individual autonomy versus societal norms, religious beliefs versus secular ethics. The varied resolutions to these issues around the world highlight the contextual nature of moral judgments. Similarly, the concept of family honor and the permissible expressions of anger and aggression differ dramatically across cultures. In some societies, a strong emphasis on family honor may lead to practices considered unacceptable in other cultures, such as honor killings, where family members are killed to avenge perceived dishonor. These actions, though extreme, reflect a deep-seated cultural belief system that dictates different moral codes and priorities. In contrast, cultures that prioritize individual autonomy and emotional restraint may perceive such acts as barbaric and morally reprehensible. Such discrepancies highlight the significant impact of cultural context on moral judgments and underscore the importance of cultural sensitivity and awareness in cross-cultural interactions and ethical discussions. Furthermore, the influence of societal structures such as laws, political systems, and economic inequalities adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of morality. Laws, for example, often codify societal moral values, establishing rules and sanctions to reinforce certain behaviors and punish others. However, laws can also lag behind changing moral values, or even reflect the power dynamics within a society. Consider the historical context of slavery or racial segregation. These institutions were once legally sanctioned, yet they clearly violated fundamental human rights that are widely acknowledged today. This highlights the limitations of legal frameworks as a sole measure of morality, and the dynamic interplay between law, societal norms, and evolving ethical standards. Similarly, deeply entrenched socioeconomic inequalities can significantly impact moral decision-making. For example, individuals facing poverty and limited opportunities may engage in actions perceived as morally questionable, such as theft or deception, simply to survive. While these actions may be condemned in abstract terms, understanding the socioeconomic context in which they occur is crucial to developing compassionate and nuanced moral judgments. The development of moral values is also profoundly influenced by socialization processes, which occur through interactions with family, peers, educational institutions, and media. Children learn moral values and behaviors through observation, imitation, and reinforcement. The values and beliefs instilled through early childhood education and family dynamics often form the foundational building blocks of an individual's moral compass. Peers play a significant role in shaping moral development, particularly during adolescence, where peer pressure and social conformity can strongly influence behavior. Educational institutions and media are increasingly important agents of moral development, contributing to the formation of societal values and beliefs. However, the influence of these institutions can also be controversial, particularly when considering the impact of media portrayals of violence, consumerism, and unethical behavior. Historical context is another crucial element in understanding the evolution of moral values. Moral codes are not static. They change over time, influenced by technological advancements, social movements, and shifts in cultural understanding. The historical trajectory of attitudes towards women's rights, LGBTQ rights, or environmental protection illustrates this dynamic process. What was once considered morally acceptable may become utterly unacceptable over time, reflecting the ongoing evolution of societal values and ethical awareness. Understanding the historical context of moral codes sheds light on the complexities of moral evolution and the importance of continuous critical reflection on our values and beliefs. Finally, the increasing globalization of society presents novel challenges and opportunities for moral understanding. As societies become increasingly interconnected, we are increasingly confronted with the need to navigate moral dilemmas that transcend national boundaries and cultural differences. The challenges associated with global issues such as climate change, international human rights, and global justice demand collaborative approaches to ethical problem solving, requiring us to find common ground and bridge diverse perspectives. In conclusion, the influence of culture and society on morality is profound and multifaceted. It shapes our moral values, beliefs, and judgments through a complex interplay of cultural norms, societal structures, socialization processes, and historical contexts. Understanding this complex interplay is essential for navigating the moral landscape with wisdom, empathy, and respect for the diversity of human experience. It requires a commitment to ongoing critical reflection, a willingness to engage with different perspectives, and a deep appreciation for the dynamic and evolving nature of moral values. Only through such engagement can we move towards a more just and ethical. The previous section explored the profound influence of culture and society on our moral compass, highlighting the contextual nature of ethical judgments and the challenges of navigating a diverse moral landscape. Now, we turn our attention inward, examining the individual journey of moral development and the intricate relationship between cognitive maturity and ethical reasoning. Understanding how moral reasoning evolves throughout a person's life is crucial to comprehending the complexities of ethical decision-making and fostering greater empathy and self-awareness. Lawrence Kohlberg's influential theory of moral development offers a valuable framework for understanding this process. Kohlberg, building upon the work of Jean Piaget, proposed a six-stage model that describes the progression of moral reasoning from a purely self-centered perspective to a more universal and principled orientation. It's crucial to understand that Kohlberg's stages are not simply age-related milestones. Rather, they represent qualitatively different ways of thinking about moral dilemmas. Individuals may progress through these stages at varying rates, and some may never reach the highest levels. Furthermore, the theory has faced criticisms, notably for its potential gender bias and its emphasis on abstract reasoning over emotional considerations. However, its core insights remain valuable in understanding the development of moral thought. The first two stages of Kohlberg's model represent a pre-conventional level of moral reasoning, characterized by a focus on self-interest and external consequences. At stage 1, the focus is on obedience and punishment avoidance. Moral judgments are made based on a simple cost-benefit analysis. Actions are deemed right or wrong solely based on whether they lead to punishment or reward. A child at this stage might avoid stealing a cookie not because it's inherently wrong, but because they fear getting caught and punished. Stage 2, often described as individualism and exchange, represents a slightly more sophisticated understanding. Right and wrong are still determined by self-interest, but reciprocity and exchange come into play. An individual at this stage might argue that it's okay to steal if the person is deserving of it. The conventional level of moral reasoning, encompassing stages 3 and 4, signifies a shift towards conformity to social expectations and societal norms. Stage 3, characterized by good interpersonal relationships, emphasizes maintaining social harmony and gaining approval from significant others. Moral judgments are made based on fulfilling expectations of those close to the individual, such as family and friends. At this stage, a person might believe stealing is wrong because it would hurt the feelings of others and damage their relationships. Stage 4, often termed maintaining social order, focuses on upholding laws and social order. Moral reasoning is guided by a sense of duty and a belief in the importance of maintaining social stability. Stealing would be considered wrong because it violates the law and disrupts the social order. The post-conventional level, encompassing stages 5 and 6, represents the highest level of moral reasoning, characterized by abstract principles and universal ethical considerations. Stage 5, social contract and individual rights, reflects a more nuanced understanding of laws and social norms. Individuals at this stage recognize that laws can be flawed or unjust, and they prioritize individual rights and democratic processes. They might argue that stealing is wrong because it infringes upon the rights of others, even if the law itself might not be completely just in all situations. Finally, stage 6, universal ethical principles, represents the pinnacle of moral development. Individuals at this stage operate based on a set of self-chosen ethical principles that are universal and consistent across contexts. Their moral judgments are guided by abstract concepts such as justice, fairness, and human dignity, regardless of legal or societal norms. Stealing would be wrong in this perspective because it violates the fundamental principle of respecting the rights and property of others. The connection between cognitive maturity and moral reasoning is evident throughout Kohlberg's stages. As individuals progress through the stages, their cognitive abilities develop, enabling them to engage in more abstract and complex thinking about moral dilemmas. At the pre-conventional level, cognitive development is limited, focusing on concrete consequences and immediate self-interest. As cognitive abilities mature, individuals are able to consider perspectives beyond their own and understand the impact of their actions on others and society as a whole. The capacity for empathy and perspective-taking, crucial aspects of moral reasoning, grows significantly as cognitive abilities develop. At the post-conventional level, highly developed cognitive abilities enable individuals to engage in abstract reasoning, formulate universal ethical principles, and critically evaluate societal norms. However, it's important to acknowledge that cognitive maturity doesn't automatically equate to moral maturity. Individuals can possess advanced cognitive abilities, yet still exhibit morally questionable behavior. Factors such as emotional intelligence, social context, and personal experiences also play a significant role in shaping moral development. For example, an individual with high cognitive abilities might intellectually understand the principles of justice and fairness, yet struggle to apply them consistently in their own life due to emotional biases or social pressures. Moreover, the limitations of Kohlberg's theory must be acknowledged. Critics have pointed to the potential gender bias in his model, arguing that it undervalues the importance of caring and empathy, characteristics often associated with feminine moral orientations. Furthermore, the focus on abstract principles can overshadow the role of emotions and intuitions in moral decision-making. In reality, moral judgments rarely arise solely from abstract reasoning. They often involve complex interplay of cognitive processes, emotional responses, and social influences. Despite these criticisms, Kohlberg's theory remains a valuable contribution to our understanding of moral development. It highlights the progression of moral reasoning from a self-centered perspective to a more universal and principled orientation, illustrating the crucial role of cognitive maturity in shaping ethical judgments. However, a comprehensive understanding requires moving beyond the limitations of any single model and integrating insights from diverse perspectives, acknowledging the multifaceted nature of moral development and the complex interplay of cognitive, emotional, and social factors. Real-world ethical dilemmas often lack the clear-cut solutions presented in hypothetical scenarios used in assessing Kohlberg's stages. Navigating such complexities requires a holistic approach that incorporates cognitive understanding, emotional intelligence, and an awareness of social and cultural contexts. The application of Kohlberg's framework offers valuable insights into different developmental stages and how individuals might approach ethical conflicts differently, depending on their level of cognitive and moral maturity. For example, consider the case of environmental protection. A person at the pre-conventional stage might only be concerned about environmental issues if they directly impact their personal well-being, perhaps by affecting their property value or health. Someone at the conventional stage might be motivated by social pressure or a desire to comply with environmental regulations. However, a person at the post-conventional stage might be driven by a deep-seated commitment to ecological justice and a belief in humanity's moral obligation to protect the environment for future generations, even if it requires personal sacrifice or challenges established societal norms. Understanding these different levels of engagement is crucial for effective communication and promoting ethical behavior related to environmental concerns. Similarly, consider the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. Individuals at different stages of moral development will likely engage with the ethical dilemmas surrounding AI in distinct ways. Someone at the pre-conventional stage might only be concerned about the potential risks to their own job security or personal safety. Those at the conventional stage might focus on adhering to existing legal regulations and industry standards. However, an individual at the post-conventional stage would likely grapple with broader philosophical questions about AI's impact on human dignity, autonomy, and the future of society, potentially advocating for principles of fairness, accountability, and transparency in AI development and deployment, going beyond mere compliance with existing rules and norms. This subsection has underscored the complex and dynamic nature of moral development, emphasizing the relationship between cognitive maturity and ethical reasoning. While Kohlberg's theory provides a valuable framework, a comprehensive understanding necessitates a multifaceted approach, integrating insights from various disciplines and acknowledging the influence of emotions, social context, and personal experiences. Only through such a holistic approach can we better navigate the intricate moral landscape and foster a greater capacity for ethical reflection and responsible action. As we move forward, we will explore the further dimensions of this journey, delving into specific ethical challenges and examining various approaches to making responsible and ethically sound decisions in our increasingly complex world. Building upon our understanding of moral development, we now shift our focus to the practical application of ethical principles in daily life. Cultivating moral character is not a passive process. It requires conscious effort, self-awareness, and a commitment to personal growth. This involves actively engaging in self-reflection, developing empathy, and fostering a strong sense of integrity. Self-reflection is the cornerstone of ethical living. It involves taking time to examine our beliefs, values, and motivations. Regular introspection allows us to identify biases, inconsistencies, and areas where our actions might fall short of our ideals. Journaling, meditation, and mindful practices can be invaluable tools in this process. By regularly reflecting on our experiences and decisions, we gain a deeper understanding of our own moral compass and can identify areas requiring improvement. For instance, consider the scenario of encountering someone in need. A simple reflection on our reaction: did we help, ignore, or offer something else allows us to explore our underlying motivations and assess whether our response aligned with our values. Did our actions stem from genuine empathy? Or were we driven by a sense of obligation, self-interest, or avoidance of discomfort? Honest self-assessment is vital for recognizing and addressing our own moral shortcomings. developing empathy is equally crucial. Empathy involves the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It requires stepping outside of our own perspective and seeing the world from another person's point of view. Cultivating empathy is not solely an emotional exercise. It involves actively seeking to understand the experiences, perspectives, and motivations of others, even when we disagree with their actions or beliefs. This can be fostered through active listening, engaging in diverse social interactions, and deliberately seeking out exposure to different viewpoints. Consider the example of environmental activism. Empathy allows us to connect with the experiences of individuals directly impact. Developing empathy is equally crucial. Empathy involves the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It requires stepping outside of our own perspective and seeing the world from another person's point of view. Cultivating empathy is not solely an emotional exercise. It involves actively seeking to understand the experiences, perspectives, and motivations of others, even when we disagree with their actions or beliefs. This can be fostered through active listening, engaging in diverse social interactions, and deliberately seeking out exposure to different viewpoints. Consider the example of environmental activism. Empathy allows us to connect with the experiences of individuals directly impacted by climate change, regardless of whether we personally share their concerns or experiences. Developing empathy enables us to navigate complex moral dilemmas by considering the impact of our actions on all stakeholders involved. Beyond self-reflection and empathy, fostering a strong sense of integrity is paramount. Integrity involves acting in accordance with our values and beliefs, even when it's difficult or challenging. It means being true to ourselves and our principles, regardless of external pressures or temptations. This involves identifying core values and prioritizing them in our decision-making processes. A life of integrity requires courage to make difficult choices, sticking to one's principles, even when it means facing criticism or negative consequences. For example, choosing to whistleblow on unethical practices within an organization showcases a deep commitment to integrity, despite the potential personal risks involved. However, the journey towards moral excellence is not without its complexities. Cognitive biases can distort our perceptions of ethical dilemmas, leading us to make decisions that are inconsistent with our values. Confirmation bias, for example, can cause us to favor information that supports our pre-existing beliefs, hindering our ability to consider alternative perspectives. In-group bias can lead to favoritism towards members of our own group, potentially compromising fairness and impartiality. Awareness of these cognitive biases is essential for making sound ethical decisions. Actively challenging our assumptions, seeking out diverse viewpoints, and seeking objective feedback on our decisions can help mitigate the influence of these biases. The ability to step back, analyze a situation from multiple perspectives, and recognize potential cognitive distortions is a vital tool in ethical decision-making. Furthermore, the impact of societal norms and cultural context should not be overlooked. Ethical judgments are rarely made in a vacuum. They are shaped by the prevailing societal norms and cultural values that influence our perspectives and behaviors. Understanding these influences allows us to identify biases in our judgment, enabling us to make more informed and ethical decisions. We should continuously evaluate our alignment with these societal expectations and assess if they align with our own values. This self-awareness helps us make sound and independent ethical decisions, rather than simply following the crowd. This can be challenging, particularly in situations where societal norms clash with personal ethics. For example, if a society condones gender inequality, individuals may need to actively challenge these norms through education, advocacy, and demonstrating alternative behaviors. Ethical decision-making involves more than simply adhering to established rules and regulations. It requires a holistic approach that considers all relevant factors. This approach involves not only analyzing the facts, but also considering the ethical implications of our choices, assessing potential consequences, and anticipating the impact on all parties involved. This reflective process requires taking responsibility for the outcomes of our decisions and developing a proactive approach to minimizing harm and maximizing good. This proactive approach necessitates careful consideration of the potential ripple effects of our choices and a willingness to anticipate unintended outcomes. For example, in a business context, implementing new technologies requires analyzing the potential impact on employees, customers, and society. Ethical leaders are those who anticipate and mitigate potential adverse consequences. Moreover, cultivating moral character is a lifelong journey, not a destination. It involves continual learning, growth, and adaptation. We will inevitably make mistakes along the way, and it is crucial to learn from these experiences, reflect on our shortcomings, and strive to do better in the future. It is through embracing this learning process that we can develop greater moral maturity and foster a more ethical way of life. This journey entails constant self-reflection and the willingness to learn from both successes and failures. Therefore, cultivating moral character involves a multifaceted approach that integrates self-reflection, empathy, integrity, and an understanding of cognitive biases in social contexts. It requires commitment, continuous self-improvement, and the willingness to learn from past experiences. The process is ongoing and dynamic, mirroring the ever-evolving complexities of life's moral dilemmas. By embracing this journey of ethical development, we empower ourselves to navigate the complexities of the moral landscape with greater awareness, compassion, and responsibility, ultimately leading to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. This includes engaging in continuing education on ethical frameworks and perspectives to broaden our understanding and refine our moral reasoning skills. The ultimate goal is to live a life guided by principles of justice, fairness, compassion, and respect for all.